Hi there, it's Simon Hurley from Inklips and welcome to another video. Thanks so much for stopping by. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to use Nuvo Drops to create your own big focal point embellishments on your cards that are kind of enamel and they look really cool in the end. Now I created a bunch of examples and did a lot of testing for this video in hopes to make it a little bit easier when you guys are creating this if you decide to create projects like this on your own. First I'm going to go over the basics of this product since there's a couple different types of the Nuvo Drops and there's a whole array of different colors. And sometimes it can be a little bit confusing to know exactly what you're buying online, so I just want to run quickly through everything that's going on here. Now these have been taking over the card making world by storm, and I am truly addicted to them. I feel like it's a great kind of cost-effective way to add embellishments to your card, and if you don't add flowers like we're doing today and stuff like that, it can also be a nice masculine way to do it rather than adding sequins and things like that, and you can get some awesome masculine effects on your cards. Now, like I mentioned, there's 5 different types of these drops. I didn't use them all in today's video, but they all give a different variety and look on your cards, and each type of drop has a ton of different shades in each color variety. Now, this first one are the jewel drops. These ones are pretty opaque, and they're really color-filled on your cards, and these ones kind of give the most look like enamel drops, and there's a bunch of different variety of colors in these. Now these second ones are also jewel drops, except they have a little bit of a tinted color to them. They're mostly clear, they have a little bit of a tint, so they give kind of a more subtle effect on your cards, but they still give a really awesome look, and you can even add them over top of images and still see what's beneath. Then the next is the glitter drops. These ones are packed with glitter. The camera doesn't really do it justice, and they're also tinted with color here. So these have a ton of glitter packed inside of them, and they give a really awesome sparkly effect on your cards. Now look in the bottle here, and it's totally packed with glitter along with that tinted color of the product. Now this next one are also the crystal drops, but these ones are metallic. They have a whole array of colors and they kind of have this pearlescent metallic shine to them, which I think is really awesome, and it gives a more elegant effect on your cards as well. Now this next one is really super awesome. These are the glow drops, and I love the effect of these. When you turn off the lights, you get this fun surprise, and they really do glow super awesome in the dark. And there's only a couple different colors in this one, but you can tell by the top of the caps that bottles have little black tops, and the bottles glow super well as well. So these give a really super awesome effect, and it's kind of a more after effect or surprise in the card when you turn the lights off. Now I also did want to mention these don't harden fully once they're dry. They do dry completely. These have been drying for about 2 days. And then if you push super hard on them, they will flatten out, which I'm not saying is a bad thing because I like to add them to little critters and do this, and it just gives you a completely different look. But you just don't want to pile super heavy things on top, but they should be completely fine going through the mail and they won't really flatten out. So now I'm going to show you how to apply these drops. I hope I organized this video in kind of a way that makes sense, and then we'll put all the cards together at the end. Now I'm starting off with the most basic ones here, and I'll kind of give you a walkthrough step-by-step of how to do this. And also, if you don't really want to freehand it, I have some ways later on how to kind of trace images and things like that. So I always start out with a little drop right in the center here, and then I can go off of that. Now these aren't going to be perfect, and you kind of want to embrace that as you're creating these flowers. They'll definitely have little imperfections, but I think that's what makes them look awesome. So then I'm just going to create about 4 petals coming out from that center dot. They don't need to be too big because we're going to be building onto the flower after this. But when you're adding these drops down, you want to make sure you kind of have your bottle tip lifted off of the surface. That'll make sure it applies perfectly and it won't kind of squirt out around the edges of the bottle. So then I'm kind of filling in some of those little areas there with some even smaller petals to round out that flower. And then to add on top of that, I'm going to go in between each petal and add some more going onto the next layer of the outside. Now each time I make a new layer of these petals, I want them to be bigger and bigger, kind of making it look like the petals or the flowers kind of unfolding and really blooming, and you can kind of really take your own creative liberties on this. I did a ton of different examples of flowers in today's video to show you all the different varieties you can do, but you can really go crazy with whatever images you want. So this is how the flower turned out. You can even go bigger if you want to, but I decided to keep it pretty simple like that. Now for that flower, I used the opaque drops, but in this one, I'm going to use those clear kind of tinted colored ones. And these ones kind of end up looking like jelly once they're dry, and I really love the effect that they give. Now, like I said, I'm starting out with those first 4 petals, kind of similar to the last flower. And then as you can see, as I go out, the flowers or the petals get bigger on the flower. So for this next one, I'm creating a different type of flower to show some variety here, and I'm also going to be showing you how to use these glitter drops and kind of some effects you can get with them. So I'm starting out with that dot right in the center of the flower there, and then I'm going to build on from that. Now instead of doing it row by row, I'm just going to do it all at once here with some larger petals. So I'm starting off in the center, and then I can go around and make kind of large oval shaped petals that get larger around the edges, and this creates your whole flower right here. Now I avoid going too much over the same place in the center to create any buildup there, and then you can see a little gap, so then I just kind of filled that in later on. That just kind of keeps it from building all up in the center and kind of creating a huge clump. So I've added some little pink drops right in the center of that flower, and then I'm going to be creating leaves using green glitter drops. Now these are going to be cut out later on, as well as all these images, so you don't need to really bother on where you're putting them on your cards because they'll all be cut out. For the next two examples, I'm going to make some larger images and do lots of shading on the inside of them to get some fun depth and dimension with these colors. So I'm starting off in the center with some brown enamel drops, and I'm going to just start putting them down right in the center, kind of leaving my bottle off of the paper, squeezing it down, and then pulling up to create an awesome rounded shape. So then going around the outside, I'm going to add my little yellow petals, not filling them in here. I'm just creating some outline shapes, kind of like we were doing the leaves earlier. Now these aren't going to be perfect, so I'm just kind of knowing that and doing a bunch of different sizes and shapes. And also, I'm going to just go around the outside with this darker color, and then I can fill it in with a lighter color in just a minute here. So now I'm taking one of those clear kind of tinted yellow drops, and I'm going to fill that right in the center. Now you could just kind of fill in a part of it to give it some shading there, but I decided to do the whole thing and make the shading kind of be around the outside edges there. So once that's done, I'm going to move on to the next flower here, starting out with a lighter color this time, and I'm going right around the edges, kind of creating a similar thing like we did with those red and pink flowers, except I'm doing a more pointed flower and a larger flower as well. So you can really have fun and play with the shapes of these flowers, and you can get different effects every time, which I think is just awesome. So then after I finished that, I'm going right on the inside, kind of like I would do with Copic shading, right around where any flower petal goes over top or kind of meets another one. And I'm going to add a little bit of a darker blue drop right inside there, kind of shading inside that portion to give it some more depth. And then I can go around the edges like I'm doing here, and you can kind of see that the drops blend and kind of mend together when they're there, because they're self-leveling, so they create a really awesome effect. So now moving on to the leaves, I'm using the same type of Nuvo drop that I would use on each flower, so I'm kind of creating a bunch of different leaves here, and these will be cut out later on and applied with the flowers. So I'm just creating some irregular kind of shapes here, and I'm making them a little bit bigger than I need on the card because I tend to tuck them underneath the flower when we're creating the card. So then I create these shapes and I add little lines in the bottom of them to create a little bit of detail, since these leaves don't want to be completely shaded in, but you still do want to add a little bit of detail so that they know they're leaves. Now you can also attach two together and really get creative with this. There's a lot of different ways you can create them. You can make some big leaves or small leaves. You can also create a big stem like this with leaves attached to it, which I also think is cool, and maybe even add a little bit of a flower blossom at the end. So you can really have fun with what you create with these Nuvo drops. And then I'm also creating them in a bunch of different shades so I can have some variety when I add them onto the cards with the flowers. Then also for those shaded flowers, I'm just doing an outline of that lighter green color, and then going on the inside, making that line with the darker green and also shading the bottom just a little bit. Now I know that freehanding these can be just a little bit difficult and daunting, so I wanted to do this in case of some of you guys wanted to just trace some images. So this is a simple way to get some really awesome images that you might want to trace from a stamp set. So I'm using this Be Strong stamp set from Altenew, and I just love these little cactuses. So I'm stamping them down in a light tan ink here, and I'm going to stamp them down once, and then I'm stamping them down twice to get the second generation stamped image, which is a ton later, so you can go over top of this, and if you miss a portion of something, it's not going to be too visible. So then, to get a nice clean line, I'm holding it a little bit off of the surface and just barely squeezing any product out here to follow those nice thin lines. Now I'm doing this with this cactus image today, but you can really have fun finding your own little images in your stamp sets, maybe floral images or little critters. It would be super fun to try out with, and I think these could create some really awesome little fun images. So like I said, you can really get into those small detailed lines if you want to by just applying barely any amount of the product and making sure that it's lifted off the cardstock so it doesn't squeeze out all over the place. So I just wanted to also share this one in case if you guys wanted to still try it but needed a little bit more of a safe start, and I definitely get it. The other flowers are a little bit daunting to try and they do take a little bit of extra time as well. So this is super fun and you can use it with any images you have. Now to finish these cards off, I'm letting all those things that I just created dry kind of overnight or even a little bit longer just to be safe to make sure that they're nice and hardened, and then I'm going to go and start cutting them out. Now with some of them like the sunflower here, I'm leaving a white border around it as well as these cactuses, and I'm matching the leaves up with those as well with the border. But then with other images like this flower, I'm going right around the edge and cutting it so that there's no white space. For the background that we're going to ground these flowers on, I'm doing something that's pretty simple, but it gives a really awesome and fun impact on your card. So I'm taking these Altenew Inkpads, which are oval shaped, so they give that awesome shape, and I'm going to just stamp those or kind of press them onto the surface of my card in different patterns to create my backgrounds. Now here you can see that since it has that felt pad, it gives that awesome texture there, and I'm just kind of monochromatically stamping them. Now Altenew is known for having their like 4 different shades of each ink in kind of a color tone, so you can kind of make your background in the same color tone with darker and lighter ink pads, and that creates a super awesome and fun background with lots of impact. Now I've created backgrounds before with ink pads on cards, and I'll link that somewhere on screen right here, but in this technique today, I'm doing more stamping techniques than swiping like I did in the last video. I'm really just having fun and playing around with the placement of each one of these. Now I added most of the flowers on the center, so I'm making kind of the pattern revolve around the center of the card. So for this one, I'm just stamping a monochromatic effect with each ink pad, and for this next one, I'm going to create my own chevron effect. So this just really shows you can have a ton of fun with this. You can swipe your ink pads or stamp them to get that fun oval shape, and it really finishes off the card with something pretty simple, but it'll definitely draw your eye to it after you see the flower. Now you could also just stamp a background with regular ink pads, but I think this is super fun and it's definitely a great way to use your colored ink pads on your cards. Now for this last one, like I said, you can definitely just swipe your ink pads, and that shows how simple you can get with these backgrounds. Then I'm taking some foam tape to pop these flowers up and make them really stand out against those backgrounds. And I'm only adding it to the center, so you could kind of curve those petals up if you wanted to. And then I'm tucking the leaves underneath using some foam tape as well, or you could just adhere those right to the cardstock. And this finishes off the flower scene there, and I added most to the center of the cards. Then for these cactuses, I'm adding those down using foam tape as well, right to the center of my cards, and I really love how all these turned out, especially those since it was just super easy to line those stamped images with it. Then for this flower, I'm adding it kind of in the center of that card, but you could play around with clustering different images, and maybe even adding 2 flowers to one card I think would be awesome. Now for this larger blue flower, it's pretty big for the card, and if you want to go for those big flowers, they definitely fill up a whole card base and make it super interesting and fun. So then I'm tucking the leaves underneath this one, but I also wanted to mention on some of the cards you can leave the leaves away from the flower, and I think that looks awesome as well. Then to finish off the cards and make them pretty nice and simple, I'm adding little sentiments stamped on them. And then for this flower here, you can make the sentiment kind of curve around the flower, which I think is super fun. So the sentiment can kind of follow that flower shape since it's a nice photopolymer sentiment. And then I'm adding some on foam tape as well. So here are all the final cards. I really love how they turned out, and I loved testing to create all these cards. It did take a little bit longer, so I apologize for that, but I truly do hope you love how these turned out and will maybe give it a try at your own crafting studio. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I would love if you can click my blog icon there, and it'll take you over there to get much more info, pictures in a full supplies list, and if you click that little subscribe button on screen as well, you can get all my videos into your inbox, and I would love if you can join my little family here on the internet. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye!